Father Peter G. Young, Jr., A Legacy Lives On. On October 14th, 2020, Father Peter Young and Greg Spencer sat down and recorded a discussion on Zoom about the need to reach out and help others, for people to become Good Samaritans. Here are excerpts of that conversation. First, a little background. Father Young's ministry started in downtown Albany, New York, following his ordination as a Catholic priest in 1959. His ministry carried on in many different areas over the next 61 years. His is a remarkable legacy, which included being high school administrator, parish priest and pastor, community activist, legislative lobbyist, substance abuse clinician, chaplain to various organizations, and developer of numerous outreach and education programs. He ministered to thousands in need, from well-to-do, successful individuals to the downtrodden and those in the criminal justice system. Greg Spencer and his family before him also have a rich legacy. His father, Fred Spencer, and Father Young pioneered the first substance abuse treatment programs in Albany in the late 1960s and early 1970s. His mother, Joan, was one of the first women in Alcoholics Anonymous in the region, and his aunt, Georgia Perrin, one of the first female addictions counselors in New York State. All were honored during their lifetimes with tributes and dedications by organizations in the recovery field. Greg entered recovery for his alcoholism in 1984. He had worked in sales and marketing for 21 years after graduating from Siena College. In 1989, he made a career change at the age of 49, and he has worked as a clinician, consultant, and program developer in the substance abuse field for over 30 years. He and Father Young worked on projects together in the past. The following is a brainstorming session as Father Young and Greg were looking to move ahead with new outreach projects concerning not just substance abuse, but mental health problems caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Father Young died on December 9th, 2020, at age 90 after a long series of illnesses. We are grateful that he left us with this final sharing of his experience, strength, and hope, never to be forgotten. His legacy will live on.
What are your ideas, Greg?
Well, I'll tell you, what I thought would be a good idea would be to talk about how we can reach out to other people to get them involved with helping others. You know, we've both got a lot of background on how we got started in this field and how beneficial it's been to us. You know, I've watched about probably 10 or 12 of your videos in the last couple of days that were on YouTube, where you've done, and you
I didn't
know
that.
you've seen, I mean, you've dealt with probably 10 times as many people as I have, but I've dealt with a ton of people myself. So between the two of us, we've reached out and helped a lot of people over the years, you know? And the one of the things that in this day and age is there's less people out there, I think, who feel comfortable doing what we did. You know, you make a decision and you say you're going to work with a certain, reach out to help people. And it's almost like things are going so fast in this day and age, and people just seem to want to hand it off to somebody else. And yet, just being able to go out and talk to somebody or reach out. I'll give you a perfect example. You know, in Sunday's paper, when you had they had the feature article on you there, which was terrific. And they had your picture, and I guess one of the things they said, when you first went up to the prison, and somebody said to you, why did you do this? And the headline said, I'm just looking over, why do it? and you said to see a fallen man rise. And that was your comment, and that's in the big headlines. And I think that's what we want to try to reach out and try to get people to realize that they can make a difference if they just reach out sometimes. What I wanted to do was to ask you to answer some questions. I'm going to throw some stuff at you. And I want to
Okay.
go back and tie in our relationship going back to when I was still at VI, and we played hoop together on Sunday nights down in the VI gym. You know, a couple of the other priests came down, and I had the keys, and we just go and play some basketball. That was, that was the first time I ever knew you. And I always said how you were overly aggressive. You weren't somebody who was physically fun to play against because people were bouncing off you left and right. But we had a great time. So that was my relationship with you. And we sort of passed it. I went up to Siena and played some ball up there, and you had been a Siena ball player. But the next time we really reconnected was right after my father got sober. My father had been a tremendously sick alcoholic, let's put it that way, as had my mother. And my mother had gotten sober 5 years, I think, about 9 years before my father did. And the next thing I know is that my father, John Devine, got my father into recovery and got him into AA. And the story that I know is, I think that you've told me, how you ran into my father. You were just getting started trying to reach out and put together a program. And you knew that there needed to be treatment and outreach done. And how you hooked up with my father, and you guys put together a program and got a grant, and you headed this thing up, and how that got off the ground by you reaching out to my father, who you met at an AA meeting. Although you weren't the alcoholic there, you went because somebody said you ought to go and watch these guys, and that's what you were out scouting.
Right.
And in your scouting, you found a lot of other people too. My Aunt Georgia and Bobby. What's his name?
Walsh.
Yeah, Bobby Walsh and Margie Albright, and they became your team in a way, and you handed them off to my father. But would you talk about how you and my father got hooked up and where you took that, just for a while, to show that you took a guy, once again, it wasn't somebody who was coming off the out of prison or out of jail who was down and out. It was somebody who had finally gotten sober after many years, but didn't have a job and didn't really know what he was doing, and he was trying to stay sober. And you two hooked up. And then you can take it from there to show what you guys were able to accomplish because you reached out and you helped my dad.
Well, it was a duty kind of thing, I felt. The last speech that Martin Luther King gave, they say, "Why did you do this?" And he said, "It was my duty." But, I do feel that, you're ordained to be able to help other people. So you feel it's a sense of duty to do the right thing and help whatever you and how you can. So to me, it was an easy decision to grab your father and try to talk with him, because I knew we both played ball in the Twilight League. And I know that we were aware of each other. And we got to be speaking with John Devine. John Devine came to me and he said, "Let's go to a meeting." I had not been to many meetings at that time. He said, "Well, I'm meeting Frank Gavin, and we're going down to a meeting. We got a new guy we want to introduce you to." Now, I had just succeeded in getting the first county grant in the history of Albany County. I had a chance to get the money from John, from at that time, who I don't remember the county authority at that time, but I got a chance to get the authority to run and try to find someone to be a director. And I found out, going out to Frank with he and John that night, that they gave me an indication that you would be a guy that could be young and energetic. That's, I'm talking about your father, and that he would be a man that would be able to need it and at the same time get it and then give it away, because he's an aggressive guy and he tries to do it as best he can. But he's honest and he's drunk. And he might argue with you, but he'll try to do his honest best. So now he's going to be available. He's out of the Navy, out of the service, the Army, I guess. And it turned out to be a win for me and a win for him. We met, we had dinner, we had coffee out at Howard Johnson's. And I said, I've got a job, are you interested? And John Devine was the matchmaker. So it was a very happy kind of thing for me to do, to see it happen. And I never got disappointed. Fred took over, did all the stuff. I was very involved in the South End and the things that were going on. But he was the best I have ever seen in making it happen. He stuck right with it. He would go out and he would debate it, argue it, sometimes push his nose right into other people. He was aggressive. I needed someone aggressive to do that, because he would be at that time going into a meeting with me. And then I would find out the guys that were there would say, why are you here? What, Father, why do we have to listen to this guy? He's nothing other than a drunk or a bum. That's all he is. You know, they were insulting him. Fred didn't take it that easy. He tried to talk about the need of being able to be in recovery. So I found your dad a very, very good man to put in the batting order for the first job that we had for the power of an alcoholic. He broke the ice. He broke the ice. He was the first one. Matter of fact, I got into a lot of things that went on, because we got into the great debate about being able to work in the field when you're recovering and taking advantage of that recovery to use it to try to get your job better performed. So it was a very interesting kind of battle. Your father fought it both on the front line and on the duty of being able to make it happen for other people. He was a good choice that I did make at that time.
Yeah, and I think the thing was, Father, that you giving him the ability to reach out and help other people really re-energized his life, because he was down and he was depressed, because he was a hard-working guy even when he was drinking.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, I think the next step was you would go out and you'd get people, some of the people out there who were struggling off the streets, and bring them in and give them to my dad to talk to. And he'd hand them off to Margie and Bobby Walsh, and they'd take them to meetings and get them try to get those people hooked up. So you had already started that ripple effect. And that's what we want to try to pass on to people, Father, is that you don't know how much you can make a difference just by reaching out. Don't walk past people. Be a good Samaritan sometimes. And we can teach them how to do that. There's people who say, I could never talk about this, and people can learn. You taught my father what he had to do to get things done, and he followed through on it. So I guess that's one of the first things we wanted to do, and then the ripple effect from that point on. My Aunt Georgia, who set up a women's program, I think someplace down at one of your places down in downtown, right?
Yep.
She did the women's group after she got sober, and then she went on to become one of the first counselors in New York State. And her and my dad went up to Spark and worked up there for a number of years. But it was the ripple effect of just taking somebody and moving them ahead and then letting them move. And I think that's the message. I got it when I was 49 years old, and I had been 4 or 5 years sober, and I had a chance to become a counselor. I had been a salesman. And the fellow who hired me up in Rutland, Vermont, I went in as a part-time worker. His name was Gil Aliber. He was the CEO, or he was the executive director of Rutland Mental Health. And they put me on because I had experience. I was a recovering guy, let's put it that way. And as soon as I started to counsel, I said, this is where God wants me to go. And I think I thought about that when I read about your calling, and something is triggered that says go in this direction. And I've been there for 35 years now, actually in the field for 31 years. And it was the most rewarding thing I've ever done. And I can't encourage people enough to go out and just tell somebody your story. If you see that they're hurting, or if you're hurting yourself, reach out and ask for help. Give somebody else the opportunity to help you. And that's what we want to try to pass on, Father, is the fact that right now, in this, in the past, we've been working with alcoholics and addicts and family members who are dealing with substance abuse and addiction, right? Now, all of a sudden, we have something new that opens up a whole new area that needs to be addressed, and we have that same medicine, and that's the mental health and the behavioral health issues that are being caused by the pandemic, by COVID-19. That we're beginning to realize that there's a lot of people who are really struggling. They're not alcoholics or addicts, but they're getting very, very mentally sick because of the fear of the apprehension, the anxiety, the stress. The stress is the word they keep using. And these people need to reach out and get help and stay in touch with other people. When you say we're probably going to go through another phase where we're going to have to start closing down again, and people need to reach out and be able to know where to go to help each other. You don't want to isolate. They say isolate, but you don't want to isolate. You might want to detach physically. But I guess what we want to try to encourage, Father, is that if you reach out, you can really make a difference. And I'll tell you, the hug came up for a reason. I saw. I'm going to tell you this. I saw you and Jim Morrell were on a program with Joe Condon, I believe, right? Wasn't Joe Condon a radio?
Yes, he is. Yes, good guy, person.
And you guys went on and you talked about the importance of reaching out, and you mentioned some things, and he was asking you and Jim Morrell about the how to do some certain things, and you led with, you need to have hope. You've got to have hope in order to try to keep moving ahead and doing this, as you told him. Morrell comes on and says, and I've known him since we were in Siena. Morrell comes on and says, and you also need guidance. You need to tell people where to go, how to do, which we were doing with Pie Hit. What I'm saying is you're getting them jobs, you're getting them housing, and you're guiding them. And you use the word guide path, right?
Yes.
That was one of your things. So we got both ends of that. You've got you're giving hope. He's talking about guidance. And I'm sitting there saying, these guys understand. You have empathy for them. And we want people to go out and say, you need, give somebody a hug. Give them some hope, understanding, and guidance. Or ask for a hug. Ask for some hope, understanding, and guidance. And use that as a buzzword over and over and over again, because it works and it makes sense and it resonates with people. But we don't want people all of a sudden isolating, and then they progress worse and worse into mental health issues, maybe get into alcohol or drugs, relapse, whatever. But without hope, there's no sense in people trying, and we need to give them that sense of hope somehow by motivating them to do what they have to do.
That's a good idea to put it that way.
But one thing I was looking at, and I've known this for years, you are a champion hugger. You've always honest to God, you've always had your hands around people, whether it's a pat on the back.
I'm guilty.
And I am too, and I love it. And people today are one of the things that they're regretting terribly. I can't get a hug. I want a hug. And what we're saying is, we can't give you a physical hug right now, but we can give you a mental and emotional hug. We can give you some hope, understanding, and guidance. And one of the things that, for example, if you can't see somebody, you can't touch somebody and give them one of those physical hugs, but you can do this. And this is you. I've got a couple of things, pictures of you doing this. It's just reaching out with your hands like you would ordinarily. You can't see me doing this, I guess. Doing that, or just saying, give me a hug. Acknowledging the fact that you're willing to give them a hug, even though it isn't going to be physical. I don't know. It's just something positive to get people moving ahead. And you know,
we're both familiar with the experience, strength, and hope. You take the experience of the person who's been wounded, you give them the opportunity of working with someone who needs it, and then you got the winning combination. What we did, you had hit the nail on the head.
You know, my mother, Joni, was 40 years sober, and one of the queens of AA, Georgia, and my dad, all three of them, left a legacy. That was the word I'm looking for. And I'll be honest with you, one of the things, you have to leave a legacy. You've already done it. I want to leave a legacy because I've helped a lot of people. And the last thing we can do is reach out and say to people, get on board. There's a great life with it. It's worth it, you know, when the time comes, but get other people involved because we need younger people to get out there and have people like you who offered my father a job or an opportunity, because a lot of people want to help out and they don't know how to go about doing it, you know. I take a look at what you did. If I take a look at your fan base, I know, you know, I watched the 500 people that show up for the fundraiser, for example, up at the golf course. But then I also take a look at all the people in downtown Albany or the inner city people, and there's just as many of them. There's just as many minorities who come up and give you a hug and love you like everybody else does, because you didn't play any favorites. It wasn't, well, I'll deal with this crowd or I'll deal with that crowd. It was alcoholics and addicts and people in need who were hurting, and you hit them all.
We got to change the attitude to an idea of acceptance of a disease and illness. And that's what really we try to do.
What do you think we should do to be able to reach out and help as many people as possible, especially now that we've got the virus and the epidemic, which is a mental health issues, and it's practicing some of those things, sharing our experience, strength, and hope. You live by that sometimes.
Well, I try to do what I'm told to do by the people that have experienced more than I do in the field. I enjoyed going around all the time. We would go to 3 or 4 or 5 meetings a week, trying if we could to meet the people in the field and then to help every one, and then build a network of them. And then the network would help on the same game, doing what we could for other people with the hundreds of others that we would meet on the way. And that's when I went out. Frank Gavin said, we got you a ticket for Ohio.
Right.
Why do I want to go to Ohio? And he said, to meet some of our friends. He did the intro, and he wanted me to try to go out and carry the message with Sister Ignatia.
Sure.
Rosary Hospital, Charity Hospital, Rosary Hall. And it turned out to be a very good experience. I learned how she did it, and I tried to bring that back into New York, but there was a lot of opposition.
Well, I guess the thing is we have now the ability, and we say this, to reach out to people because of what we're doing right now. We're sitting here talking to each other, and being able to pass this on. We could put this on YouTube. You can do whatever you want to carry a message these days. And a fellow said to me, who did a couple of videos for us, a professional, young guy though, real dynamic guy. And he says, Greg, he said, I got to tell you something. You and Joel Stashenko, who's the president of our board, he and I have been doing most of the work with our SAIR program. And what he said was, you guys have put down some great stuff on your website. Your website is absolutely terrific, and people should be looking at it and reading it and everything else. But he said, you got to be realistic about what's happening in this world today. He said, younger people, and when he said younger people, he said people my age, and he's 31 or 32, going right back down. People don't read anymore. He says they'll read for 2 minutes and lose. You've got to do it on video. You've got to do it on audio, if nothing else. You know, he said you can write, but you got to get it down. And that's why I wanted to do what we're doing, to see what we can pass on. You know, if we get together again and make some plans on what we want to do, just to reach out to those hundreds and hundreds of people who are going to be coming along after us. Most of our friends are our peers, you know, in their 70s, 80s, 90s. The younger generation needs to get this information inside their head somehow, and the field isn't the way it used to be. You see that yourself, you know that.
Oh, you're right. We were losing when we had to close, forced to close Altamont. We were losing about $90 a day on every client because we had to meet all of these different criteria regulations.
Yeah.
And therefore, you couldn't continue a program that was more in our line of operation. It had to be only according to that one final style or not, and you would get ostracized if you didn't do it that way. There's a lot of need here for people in recovery to help, and they want to help. Why don't we take advantage of that?
I totally agree. And I keep saying over and over and over again, there's no coincidences. Coincidence is God protecting his anonymity. You put yourself out there, things will happen. You know, they always do. You run into my father, you know, and you put something together, and then that ripple effect that goes out. And that's, and I can't, Father, I've got to say this because I get choked up when I say it. People don't understand. A lot of people don't understand unless they experience it, how great it feels when somebody comes up to you and said, boy, you saved my life, or you meant so much to me when I really needed you. You can't buy that with all the money in the world. That's what it's all about. And I think that's what we want to try to impress upon people. You don't have to have everything. Maybe God's got a plan for you where he wants you to move on and do something else right now that'll be more rewarding in certain ways. Who knows? But anyway, that's my...
Well, I'm with you on the journey.